welcome to our webinar this evening in the University of Wolverhampton. I'm very pleased to have a very full panel of guests here this evening to discuss when medicine and art meet. My name's Maggie Ayliffe and I'm head of the Wolverhampton School of Art, and today is World IBD Day. And it might seem to some a bit of a strange thing for a head of art to be talking about this evening, and to be focusing on an event around inflammatory bowel disease. However, since 2019, I've been involved in a really exciting project with doctors, psychologists, patients and artists, looking at how art and design can open up conversations and information about these conditions. That in some ways are the untalked about, often invisible and hard to live with conditions. We've taken the opportunity of World IBD Day to draw together our work in this field and hopefully raise awareness of the interdisciplinary approach we have taken to this problem. So welcome. We've got a very full agenda tonight, and we'll be starting with Dr. Denise Doyle from the University of Wolverhampton and the School of Art, who will give us a brief overview of how art and science collaborations have become a disciplinary field. We were then hoping to turn to Dr. Helen Steed from the Royal Wolverhampton NHS Trust to discuss her role in the project and how she identified the need for research activity in relation to IBD and South Asian women. Helen hasn't been able to join us yet, and we know that she was on the wards all day today, so we are hoping that she might join us at some point this evening. But if not, we'll go straight to Dr. Satvinder Purewal and research student Becky Homer, who will discuss how they used research with patients to develop the project further from a psychological perspective. And then we'll turn to the artists, initially looking at the work of Charlotte Dunn and Eve Travers, who were part of our first set of artist commissions in 2019. And then we're going to meet some newly commissioned artists, Rae Francis, Jess Butcher, Sorrel, Milne and Paul Stringer, and explore in a kind of open crit and discussion really their early kind of ideas and work within the complex theme of IBD and pregnancy. So a lot to get through. If you do have questions as we go, please put them in the Q&A box or the chat box, and I'll try and chair them as we move through the evening. Just to remind everybody that this is a public event and it is being recorded, so please don't put anything personal within the chat box or the Q&A. With that, I think we should start. So over to Denise.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here to talk to you about art-science collaboration. And this is going to be a whistle-stop tour in 15 minutes with a little bit of a historical context thrown in. So the image you can see here is of an exhibition that the university held in its Made in Walls gallery, showcasing a project that we ran recently, and more of that a little later on. Oh. Yeah, it won't move. Oh, there we go. Right, so after Maggie asked me to do this overview, I came across this headline from the science journal Nature, dated only late February of this year. And of course it says collaborations with artists go beyond communicating the science. So for those in research, public engagement with science has become essential and now most definitely built into any research project. Perhaps it does make sense that that scientists are increasingly seeking out artists and designers to help them communicate their work to new audiences. But as the article suggests, that the alliances are most valuable when scientists and artists have a shared stake in a project. They can jointly design it and can critique each other's work. So such an approach can prompt new research as well as result in powerful art. And a really nice quote that was in the article states that artists help scientists reach a broader audience and make emotional connections that enhance learning. And I think that fits well with our session here this evening. So the article also cited an installation entitled Centrebeam, developed by the then newly formed Centre for Advanced Visual Studies at MIT, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1977. And this new centre was set up to explore the role of technology in culture. And Centrebeam was a 44-metre long installation illustrating energy transfer and included laser drawings against clouds of steam, which you can see here, holograms lit by mirrors tracking the sun, and huge nylon sculptures lifted into the air with helium-filled polyethylene tubing. So, of course, this was not the first time collaborations were encouraged between art, science and technology. The first exhibition in the UK that experimented with presenting the work of scientists, engineers, musicians and artists alongside each other was held at the ICA, which is the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London in 1968, entitled Cybernetic Serendipity. And this was curated by Yasha Reichardt, who still lives in London and is still working and contributing to the field. And the image you see here is the exhibition catalogue and a photo of Yasha during that year. So the exhibition itself featured collaborations between artists and scientists and showed them on an equal footing. The breaking down of barriers between disciplines was an important factor of the exhibition. Machines were shown alongside artworks and no differentiation was made between the object or the process or the material used or the method or between the background of the makers. So 50 years on, the historical relevance of this groundbreaking exhibition continues in almost everything we visually and even orally consume in the domain of the digital right now. So fast forward to 2003, 2004, and the Animated Mind series commissioned by Channel 4 television, taking the testimony of a variety of people who have experienced mental distress and communicating their experience through animation. The result, it was hoped, would be a series of engaging short films that would give a general audience a greater understanding of what it felt like to live with these mental difficulties. And the success of this project has helped to shape a new genre, that of the animated documentary. And the resource, if you're interested, is actually nearly 40 films now. And if you Googled Animated Minds, you'll find them. So an animator that has made a real contribution to the field of animated documentary is Sam Moore, who used to work at the university and has moved on to Manchester. And one of her first animated documentaries was called An Eyeful of Sound, working in collaboration with neuroscientist Jamie Ward, who you can see at the bottom, and a group of people with audio-visual synesthesia. And synesthesia is a neurological condition that results in a merging of senses that are not usually connected. So, for example, someone with synesthesia can hear sound or even see sound. Hear colour or see sound. And the people with visual synesthesia who took part in the project all had a strong visual reaction to sound. So when they heard sounds or music or the phone ringing, for example, they experienced different colours and shapes and movement. And Sam tried to capture those experiences of the synesthetes. So you can see a couple of screenshots of the animation itself, and the one at the bottom shows responses to particular notes being played on a particular instrument from one of the synesthetes. Another project that Sam was involved in was entitled Silent Signal, and this was funded through the Wellcome Trust in 2016. which paired 6 animators with 6 scientists. And Sam was paired with Dr. Sergei Mostawy, and the work done in his lab on septin assembly in cells using a zebra fish model. And the film Loop is about what can be seen and what cannot be seen, and how scientists imagine their work and how they describe it. So the scientists from the lab tried to describe what they saw as the structure of these septins, and Sam found out that actually the scientists had different theories about how it was being assembled. They'd kind of assumed that they were all sharing the same understanding, but what she found out was that they actually weren't. So you can see an image of Sergei and Sam on the right, and then a couple of images of where Sam is actually animating some crochet in response to some of the descriptions that she heard. So moving on to another interesting pairing of art and science, that of space studies and performance. Artist astronaut Sarah Jane Pell, she's actually from Australia, has been researching the experience of the body in space or zero gravity, and conversely underwater, with both extreme environments having a similar effect on the body. And you may know that our astronauts are trained underwater for their International Space Station missions. Sarah is also a fully qualified astronaut who's able to participate in space missions as an artist in residence, and contributes her artistic practice to further the discipline of space studies. So some recent research she has undertaken is as artist in residence at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. I think that was in 2018. And this comprised of 2 weeks of intense research, team building, and mission simulation in the analog Mars environment. So in this slide, you can see is still on the left from Sarah's 2016 film entitled We're All Explorer Fish, and it's a fictional account of the first manned mission to Mars. And the second image on the right, I thought I'd leave it in because it's now almost 25 years since a number of arts projects, research projects were being developed, focusing on the experience of weightlessness and zero gravity. And this was following the employment of French dancer Kitsu Dubois at the French Space Agency. And she was employed to train astronauts how to control their bodies in zero gravity. So moving on then to the STARTS initiative of the European Commission, and STARTS here stands for Science, Technology and the Arts. Now this initiative has only really been developed since 2013, so only 8 years ago, and it aims to foster alliances through technology and artistic practices. And the STARTS Prize in particular focuses on celebrating innovative collaborations and artistic explorations in this art science arena. And 2 prizes are given of €20,000 each year. And here you can see Julia Tomasello receiving her award for her project, Future Flora, from 2018. And that was also featured in the Made in Wars gallery. So the rest of the examples I'm going to show just in the last few minutes are all STARTS projects. This is a fashion designer, Iris van Herpen's Magnetic Motion collection from 2016, where she explores the interplay of magnetic forces. And Van Herpen visited CERN's Large Hadron Collider, providing inspiration for the Magnetic Motion series. And you can see just a slither of the Hadron Collider at the bottom of that image. So the Tree Lab project is a collaboration between tree physiologist Roman Zweifel and sound artist Marcus Mader, and began as an investigation into the effects of climate change on Scots pines in the Swiss Alps. Zweifel wanted to also explore sounds made by trees that occur due to drought stress. As Tree Lab developed, the researchers realised that it could if they could make stress-induced plant signals perceivable to humans, an abstract concept like climate change could be made more tangible through an installation environment. And here are a couple of examples of the different versions of the installation. So in 2019, we were fortunate enough to be awarded funding to enable us to collaborate with the STARTS Prize and to undertake our project, identifying successful STARTS methodologies. And this included creating an exhibition of the project alongside 3 of the STARTS projects. So from STARTS Prize 2020, we included the work of Taiwanese artist Pei-Ying Lin, working with her scientist collaborator and virologist Miranda de Graaf. Her project, Virophilia, investigates the possibilities of human virus encounters. And one part of the installation is a 7-meter high scroll, which you can see in the image, that lists all known viruses in the world, with space for more to be added. There's a sort of empty line at the bottom right-hand side. So you can imagine how interested we were in this project when we were selecting the 3 projects in the midst of the first lockdown during 2020. And another part of the project is a cookbook written for the 22nd century, where humans have learnt to live with and accept viruses as part of a greater ecosystem. My personal favourite is influenza egg on rice, which I've sort of added a little image on there. But equally, there are many strange and thought-provoking combinations in the cookbook itself. And finally, in the This Is Grown project, artist and designer Jen Keane focused on the development of biological alternatives to synthetic materials. And her work was created using cellulose-producing bacteria to create biosynthetic material. This was then used as a product in a technique that she created called microbial weaving to create a new material. And she basically used this to create the upper material of a trainer, which you obviously can see in the image here. And Jen has recently started a new company called Modern Synthesis, and that's really worth looking at as well, in London, where she's further developing this system of microbial weaving. So I'm going to end on an image created by architect and artist Neri Oxman, who's also a professor at MIT. And she calls this the cycle of creativity. And you notice that she's included art, science, design, and engineering into this cycle. And to me, it actually looks like a compass. And the flexibility of a compass is that it moves when you move. So I think if you're in the realm of art, you can easily point to the realm of science and vice versa. I think it's a really nice, interesting image. So I can't believe that's 15 minutes, but that was a very whistle-stop tour of just a general overview of different combinations of art science practices. So I'm looking forward to staying as long as I can and hearing some more about the art meets medicine this evening.
Thanks, Denise. That was really great. Scott Knight's just popped in the Q&A that you can view the whole exhibition on a virtual platform called Matterport, and he's put the link into the Q&A. So if anybody wants to see the full STARTS exhibition, you can go through that link. So thanks for that, Scott. I know Denise might not be able to stay with us all evening. She has a young child who I no doubt will be wanting her attention at some point during the evening. So if anybody does have questions for Denise, it'd be good to send them straight away. I think that what was really interesting about that for me was we tend to think about art and science as being a relatively recent kind of collaborative activity, but actually what you've shown is it's had quite a long history already. I suppose just to throw a question at you randomly,
yeah.
What do you think really works about for artists, I suppose, when they get to respond to scientific research and ideas?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think it's, again, my feeling around having sort of undertaken that project is the kind of openness that comes with in sort of engaging in a discipline outside of your own. And I think that's hopefully quite mutual to the scientists as well. And certainly that's what we found through interviewing sort of artists and scientists on both sides of the kind of collaboration, that they were kind of both challenged, really, to see things differently, to approach subjects differently. So I do think it takes a particular kind of person to enjoy that uncertainty. Yeah, and I think that's on both sides, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. That sense of not being totally in control of the subject matter in a way. Yeah,
and also I think it's, you know, it's incredible to make those links between subjects that have now become so separated. And of course, you know, I certainly didn't want to start with Leonardo, but you know, centuries before, you know, there weren't these distinctions as so clearly as there have been over the last 150 years. So
yeah, that's really something maybe we'll return to with some of the artists on this project later. Okay, thanks, Denise.
okay.
I think Helen has joined us. So Helen, are you good to go next?
Yeah, I'm good, Maggie.
Hello. So as you can see, I think Helen's still at work. So thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. And Helen's going to give us a little bit more introduction about her work and why this project was needed, I suppose.
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to talk for, I think, around 10 minutes. As it's World IBD Day, I wanted to promote IBD, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then, as Maggie says, why we were keen to delve into the realm of art and science and why I think it's important. So bear with me if some of these links don't work. I'm hoping I can play this. Oh, it's not going to work. Hang on then, bear with me. Oh. Technology is so frustrating. Oh, it says references to external media objects have been blocked.
Is there something on the other side of the screen that says allow?
Oh, enable content, you're right, well done.
Yep.
Okay, so if I try resharing and see if that works again now.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and microscopic colitis are all types of a condition called inflammatory bowel disease. They're lifelong conditions. Ulcerative colitis affects the large intestine. Crohn's disease is most likely to be found at the end of the small intestine, but can affect any part of the gut, from your mouth to your bum. It's not yet known what causes Crohn's and colitis, but over 300,000 people in the UK have it. That's more than the number of people with Parkinson's and MS combined. Not everyone with Crohn's and colitis will be affected in the same way. For many, but not everyone, their condition can cause diarrhea mixed with blood and mucus, tummy pain, extreme tiredness, and weight loss. Crohn's and colitis can also affect areas outside of the gut, causing problems like joint pain, mouth ulcers, and inflamed eyes. A lot of people can feel really isolated by their condition, which can lead to depression and anxiety. How someone is affected can change over time and can be different day to day. When symptoms are bad, it's usually referred to as flaring or being in a flare-up. When a person is feeling better and their condition is under control, it's known as being in remission. There are many different medicines available to help treat Crohn's and colitis. Not everyone responds to these in the same way, so it may take some time to find treatment that's right for each person. For some people with Crohn's or colitis, surgery to remove part of their intestine is the best way to help them live well with their condition. At the moment, there's no cure for Crohn's or colitis, but with the right treatment and support, many people will be able to live life to the full and enjoy all the things they used to.
So that's a little snippet from Crohn's and Colitis UK, who are the patient charity for patients with inflammatory bowel disease. And you can see the blending there of art for the benefit of patients being used by them. So I'll come back to that a little bit later. Just to stick with the diseases themselves, I just want to show this example of the colon. So this is a large bowel, and this is a healthy large bowel. You can see the very pretty kind of pale pink lining, which is called mucosa. And you can see the blood vessels really clearly, and you can see there's a nice wide open hole for the bowel for feces to come through. And I'm going to show you next a picture of what things look like when things are not so good, or as that video was referring to, in a flare-up. So this is the bowel in a flare-up, so you can see it looks completely different. You've lost that pale pink and you've got kind of angry pinks here. There's blood visible here. These are deep ulcers driven down the lining of the bowel, so you can imagine that that's going to cause a lot of pain. And you can see that overall that it looks narrower, it's not as wide open as it was as well. So these are severe diseases of bad disease, but this is why people feel very unwell. But it's all very much on the inside, it's not visible to people necessarily on the outside. And often, even when you examine patients with inflammatory bowel disease as a doctor, there won't be anything abnormal to find unless there's something really seriously wrong. So for patients, it can really feel like an invisible illness and that they're not really seen. This is just a sort of example of how we treat a patient. So this is how complicated it is to treat a patient and the different pathways that they might follow from being in primary care and in secondary care, which is hospital care. And how many different drugs there are and how it changes. And you saw on that video that they're saying they could change week to week or month to month. So there's constant moving around here. So there's a huge amount of information for patients to get to grips with and understand. And I'm sure that some people will feel that they never really fully get it, and other people are really empowered and probably know this stuff off by heart. But it is a very complicated disease to manage and to live with. And for patients where drugs don't work, surgery is an option. So this is from a campaign of Get Your Belly Out, sort of to destigmatize stomas by some of the IBD charities. And surgery is an excellent solution to disease when it's really difficult and it's not responding to medical intervention, and makes people feel huge amounts better and can give them back their quality of life. But obviously it's a massive step for people to take. And they've got a whole host of other things to deal with. So the impact that having a chronic illness can have on your mental health, the fact that it can affect your travel, what vaccinations you can and can't have and when you should have them, which might impact on what job you can do. The fact that there's an increased risk of cancer for some people. They might have anemia, problems with their bones. It will affect their diet, fatigue, eyes, skin. There's a whole host of things. So it really takes over your life in terms of the way the disease affects every aspect. And this is just a summary slide of where we were and where we've come medically. So back in the 1900s, when the disease was first recognized, there was no treatment, it was bed rest. then basically there was no cure or development of any treatment until the 50s. So the huge numbers of patients died at this stage from sepsis and infections and infections in their tummy, and then drugs started to come along, and there was a little bit of improvement. There were certainly ways to manage people, reduce some of those deaths, but it wasn't really until, you know, hard to believe, but into the 1990s and 2000s when the other drug interventions came along that we see that are so predominant in how we look after patients today, and that includes sort of surgical interventions and surgery becoming more safe and a kind of appropriate regular management for people, whereas you'd be much more likely to die in the 50s if you were having to have surgery. The other bit on the timeline to draw your attention to is the organisations. So it's got Crohn's and Colitis Foundation there, Crohn's and Colitis UK, and NAC, which is now known as Crohn's and Colitis UK. They sprang up as to fill the gap that doctors failed to fill. So we were, and probably still are, very bad at conveying information to patients in a patient-friendly manner. And patient charities developed to fill that hole that we left as a profession, and produce patient information leaflets and created support groups and ways of people getting together. So they really took over that. And actually, if you come to today, we completely rely on that for that. So we print out the information leaflets they produce and we give them to patients. We don't use any of our own material anymore. So these information leaflets are written with doctors and patients and kind of professionals who really look at the wording to make sure that nothing causes offence and that it is detailed. So this is how we as doctors and scientists share information with each other. So these massive conferences with these huge poster boards that you walk around at lunchtime and you ask questions to the researchers who are standing in front of the poster boards, all sitting in these huge conference theatres once a year, sort of hearing talks on the cream of the crop, if you like, of the science of that year. So you can imagine this is probably not a great way of sharing information with patients. And so that was really where our sort of question came from, is how can we share the research that we do better with patients? Journals is the other way that we use it as sort of physicians. But again, reading some of these documents are like 300 pages long. It's just not very realistic to expect lay people who may have a university degree and a PhD, or they may have dropped out of school. You know, so we're dealing with people who've got all kinds of educational qualifications or perhaps learning disabilities that make it really hard for them to access this kind of information. Some patients definitely do read these things, but they're a minority. And at the end of the day, this is really what it's all about, is how we communicate better with this group. So this is a group of CCUK patients taking part in a charity walk it to fundraise, which they haven't been able to do now for a year, but hopefully next year they'll have more success in being able to run that kind of event. So it's these people we do it for, is how do we communicate better with them? And these are the examples of the leaflets that CCUK produce. So this is just one leaflet around one drug. There are leaflets for all of these other things, for diet, for all those other aspects that I told you about earlier about travel and bones. There's still a lot of reading and text involved. You've still got to take it kind of in bite-sized chunks, and you know, they are well written, but you can see this one, it's cut off at the end, but it's still sort of 8 pages long for one drug. So there's a lot of information to give to people, and is this the most effective manner of giving them that information? There is a will from our side as healthcare professionals to communicate better and in different ways with patients. So I'm sorry the pictures are all blurred. I don't really know why. They look very sharp on my phone. But these are pictures from an event that we held pre-COVID on World IBD Day. And we had Colin the colon, not the caterpillar from Marks and Spencer's, but Colin the colon, that people can kind of walk through and you can actually visualize what's going on in the bowel and see what it is. And we invite people into the unit, and they can come into the endoscopy department when they're not having an endoscopy, so it's less sort of terrifying, and we've got a model and they can have a go at doing an endoscopy themselves. So we are keen to kind of interact with patients in ways that, and particularly for those groups that are sidelined by the other methods that we have for communicating with them through the sort of leaflets and charities. And so that's really sort of the end of my presentation. So that's why, from my perspective, I became interested in this initiative. And when Sati sort of brought it up as an idea, that we've jumped on board, and we're now onto our second project. So I was going to let Sati tell you a bit more about the project itself that we did, that sort of led to the initial artwork with Eve and the other artists, if that's okay, Maggie.
Yep, that's perfect. Thanks, Helen. That's really, really interesting. And I think it's probably a good idea to go straight to Sati and Rebecca to talk about how they started to work with you from their research angle, and then we can have a look at some more questions.
Are you able to see this?
We can. Do you want to put it on full screen?
Yeah, I'm just doing it.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So hi, I'm Sati Purewal and I'm a psychologist, and Rebecca Homer is also our PhD student, and we're going to be talking about our first project that we worked together. So that's with as a psychologist with Helen Steed and Professor Matt Brooks from New Cross Hospital, and also with Art School that's led by Maggie as well. So Maggie, so Helen's already spoken about how difficult IBD is as a condition, and it is quite distressing. And what we also found out is that IBD is also increasing in sort of non-white groups in the UK, particularly the South Asian groups. But IBD isn't a common South Asian illness. What I mean by that is, so the rates of IBD are increasing within British South Asian groups, but IBD isn't a common South Asian illness. So it doesn't have the same sort of cultural legacy of knowledge of conditions like diabetes. And for example, in the South Asian languages, there's also a word for diabetes, and IBD doesn't have that because IBD is quite uncommon and very new illness for most British South Asian patients. So we know it's a new illness. We know that a lot of there's a growing rates of British South Asian people getting IBD, but there's a lack of research on how what's the impact of having IBD within these British South Asian lives. So what we did was we conducted a piece of research on 8 women within the West Midlands area who had IBD, and we did a qualitative study using a method called discourse analysis, and that very much looked at the language we used when we experiencing a certain psychological experience or psychological event. So our study found that there was a lack of awareness of IBD, and this is by patients before they're diagnosed. This is also by the immediate family and also the wider South Asian community. And that could be really difficult for them to understand what they're experiencing, also for the family members and the community to understand what they're experiencing. For example, a lot of people didn't know whether is IBD contagious. If you have IBD, does that mean your kids will have IBD? So there's a lack of knowledge about that, and that could be very difficult. And that often leads to, not always, but quite often is associated with large levels of perceived stigma of having IBD in these communities. So what happens is patients don't disclose the illness to other people, and sometimes not even to the spouses or not even to the parents, because they feel they might be stigmatized or discriminated against. So we found that most of our participants in our study very much lived in IBD in secrecy. There was lots of pressures regarding marriage and parenthood. But again, it was very difficult because those patients are no longer considered marriage material, or a lot of patients doubt whether, could they become moms, or would the children have IBD? So those kind of challenges came into the mix as well. And also there's a lot of a misunderstanding about the role of food, particularly spicy food within South Asian communities. Patients often believe spicy food is responsible for some of their symptoms. So would they avoid attending like social or family events if there's spicy food available? Or sometimes they find really nice ways of managing conditions. So one of our participants, whenever she's out on a social event, always sit next to her dad. So she used to get her dad to slowly eat his food but her food just discreetly, so he's having 2 meals. The idea that they didn't want anyone else to know why she's not eating that kind of spicy food. So what we found with this is within all our participants, they experience a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation, high levels of depression and anxiety. Some of them have marriage breakdown, low self-esteem, and very poor body image issues. So it's a very big illness for all our participants. And our study had 2 recommendations. We recommended, 1, that we need to raise awareness of IBD in South Asian communities, and 2, to help destigmatize the condition within those communities. Now, this is actually quite challenging for us as psychologists. Fine, we can raise awareness of IBD in South Asian communities, we can create leaflets and information sheets, translate into the different languages. But when it comes to destigmatizing a condition, that is really difficult, because if you think of what is stigma, stigma is a socially constructed concept. It is something that we as society, as cultures, give meaning to. So what is stigmatizing for one person might not be stigmatizing for another person. So let's take about something like, let's say, teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy might be more stigmatizing for one family than it is for another family, or whether it could be more stigmatizing in certain regions of the UK compared to other regions of the UK. And also worldwide, in different countries, different societies and communities, teenage pregnancy may not be seen as a problem. It might be seen as a very desirable thing to do, young women getting pregnant. So that, as for psychologists, so how do we do this? How do we tackle stigma? Well, we as psychologists, we probably can't, because most of our interventions tend to be centered upon people or perhaps their family unit, but not much wider society. And because it's a cultural concept, we turn to the art school, because we realize actually they are in a better position to help us to meet our study recommendations and look at how we can tackle stigma. So we met up with Maggie and Scott and Helen at the art school, and we applied for Art Council funding to come up with an intervention that we can do that will help us meet our studies recommendations. So what we developed was a quite an innovative art and psychological health-based approach, and our aims was, 1, to raise awareness of IBD in these South Asian communities, and 2, to help create a dialogue of stigma within these communities. Now, the project team was very multidisciplinary, so we had us guys, the psychologists of all, clinicians, so these are gastrologists, so Professor Steed and Professor Brooks were working with us. Of course, we had artists. We commissioned 5 artists, and we also had art advisors from the art school that was led by Maggie. And also because we wanted to make sure it was a very much a patient-led approach, and we had one of our participants in our study, a young South Asian woman with IBD. She acted like a consultant on the project. She was there to help us on a selection panel to recruit artists. She also worked with some of the artists, and she was very influential in helping us to kind of disseminate and publicize our work as well. So what we did was we commissioned 5 artists, and they artists who worked in sculpture, animation, video, poetry, and textiles, and they were given a 3 weeks residency at art school. And what we wanted them to do is engage in our research, so empirically based research. So we gave them the transcripts from our interviews, and we let them read the transcripts. So these are women's experiences, transcripts which were anonymized, and we had permission from all our participants to use the data. But this is, so we didn't want them to give our written up summary of women's experiences. What we wanted our artists to do was interpret women's experiences using their own voices. And we also had a meeting where Helen again and Becky and I, we talked about the project, we talked about what the condition is like. And we had that meeting so they can ask questions about the project and the remit within that. And we made sure that all the artists were supported with the whole 3 weeks of residence. So they had access to us as psychologists, but for our research, the clinicians, and also the IBD patients as well. And we very much encouraged, actually the artists didn't need that much encouraging because they all looked into the transcripts. and it all picked out important themes regarding stigma, how IBD is challenging your femininity or your sense of womanhood, the need for secrecy. So they were able to pick up all that themes and create artwork that reflect that. And what we did at the end was we had this art exhibition at the Wolverhampton NHS Trust, and we had the mayor turn up, the hospital's NHS Trust, we had the prospective MP who's turned up as well, and obviously university and hospital staff and patients as well. Now, we were meant to tour the exhibition to other venues as well, but then COVID-19 happened and we weren't able to do that. But I think we were quite pleased with some of the outcomes of this. So if you think about what were our study aims, we wanted to create a new approach, a kind of art and psychological health-based approach. We wanted to raise awareness of IBD in South Asian communities, and we also wanted to create a dialogue about talking about stigma within these communities. And I think we're still working on the approach, and this was considered to be more of a pilot study, but I think we made some significant steps in how we as psychologists and clinicians can work with art school, and how we can develop a method that's based upon empirical research and have certain aims and outcomes that we wanted to do. So we're getting there with this aim. We were quite successful in raising awareness of IBD in South Asian communities. For example, the exhibition got noticed in BBC News, so they wrote a news article about it. We got interviewed by BBC Residents Today. We also did a radio interview with BBC Asia Network, and also we made a short documentary about it, and that's got like over nearly 700 views on YouTube. So I feel quite confident that we were able to have a reach and raise awareness of IBD. Now, like Helen talked about before, the way we academics talk, we often talk to each other, we write dry academic papers. So even though our academic paper would never have this kind of publicity if we hadn't got in touch with the art school, if it wasn't an art-based project, we wouldn't have been able to raise awareness of these issues that were so important in our research. And it's because of this collaboration that we feel quite successful in doing that. But when it comes to creating a dialogue about stigma in these communities, this is something, and I think because this was a pilot project, we didn't quite think about how we will be evaluating our outcomes and what we want. So we don't know if we have created a dialogue about stigma. We didn't collect the data, and to be honest with you, we weren't even sure how we would do that. I think it's a new project. We're still working out what we wanted to do. So debating a dialogue is something we're not so confident about, but we do feel more confident about the fact we have raised awareness of IBD in these communities. So this was a pilot project. Now we are replicating this method for another project, which I know that the artists were talking about on family planning, and this has been commissioned by Crohn's and colitis. And the idea is that we are going to be writing a practice paper, a paper about the method, and also developing ways that we can evaluate how successful these types of interventions are. And hopefully we're in a better position to be able to do that. I think that's it. Thanks. Oh.
Okay. That's lovely. Thank you. That was really interesting. And I don't know, Becky, do you have anything you wanted to add as you've been involved in this project as well?
Sorry, I was still on mute. No, I think Sati's covered all of it. I mean, obviously, the really important thing is evaluating our sort of outcomes this time, which we are on top of at the moment. We're still working progress, which is great, to be honest. So yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think what we've heard from so far is a very kind of good introduction to why the project happened. I think from an art school perspective, it was interesting because obviously Sati got in touch with us, said, would you be interested in this project? And I think sometimes there's a bit of nervousness about approaching the School of Art, but actually we were so excited by it because it it provided an opportunity to do some really new work and commission young artists to get involved in the project. So what we did really was, once we'd spoken to Sati, like she said, we put in an Arts Council bid to fund some emerging artists, to commission some work, to be artists in residence in the art school if they needed to be, and to see really without any preconceptions what kind of art would be proposed. We didn't know, and how artists would work with these transcripts of patients. So directly working with the voice of another was quite an interesting proposition for artists. So having been successful with the Arts Council bid, we put out a public call looking for emerging artists, so graduate artists, people who hadn't been out of university for that long. And honestly, we didn't know whether we'd get any response at all. We did an information evening, and Helen showed her slides and images, which are obviously pretty raw in places, no pun intended, but pretty difficult imagery to look at, and we had quite a good turnout of artists attended, and we waited for proposals to come in, and we were delighted when we did get quite a good number of potential projects. The interviewing process was interesting because we did include obviously people from the art school, but Helen and Sati and Rebecca and one of the patients as well was on that kind of selection process. So we did discuss each artist's work who presented, and I think and then selected 5 to take forward. So we're really lucky tonight. We've got 2 of those artists with us who are going to talk a little bit about how they approached the project. So I think, should we go to Charlotte first, Charlotte Dunn, whose work we've already seen in Sati's presentation. Charlotte, are you?
Yeah, okay. Hello everyone, so I'm Charlotte. I'm an artist. I have always been fascinated with, I'm going to share my screen now, and if it goes to the right page, there we go. So I've always been interested in art and science and the mixture between art and science, and I suffer from ulcerative colitis myself. I was diagnosed in 2018. I have quite severe ulcerative colitis. I'm just seeing if I can change this view because there we go. And when I've been to hospital, I'd always been fascinated by, well, what does my stomach actually look like? Like what I know it's bad and I'm in a lot of pain, but what does it actually look like? And when this project came about, and I read the sort of stigmas that some of these girls were facing, I had never really faced any of those stigmas that I'd suffered, and that correlation was really interesting to me. But then a lot of it came out of, if these girls could see what was going on inside them, if they had something to show somebody, a visualization, perhaps they would find it easier to talk about. I know I suffer from epilepsy and I suffer from IBD as well, and I've always thought if I had a picture of something to just show people how bad my stomach is today, and how, like Helen, those pictures that Helen showed, that's how bad I feel today, then people might start to understand. So I found, I can't see them at the moment, but I found that when I was looking at ulcerative colitis, that people, doctors or people who use medical imagery, they put stain in biopsies of ulcerative colitis patients, and it's called H&E stains, and it creates this amazing swirly beautiful pink patterns. I have got some examples here, but I can't quite get to them. But anyway, so they are really beautiful, and it makes the disease look a lot more beautiful than it actually is. And those swirly patterns, to me, they reminded me very much of the beautiful patterns on a sari, the beautiful needlework and everything that South Asian women wear on their bodies when they wear a sari. So I brought the two together. So I made these drawings. This is actually of a drawing that I did of a H&E stain of somebody with ulcerative colitis. So you can kind of see the ulcers here. So I started by making these ink drawings of these. and again, it changed the whole composition of a medical image. It made it more accessible to people. It made people start to become more understanding about what was going on. And then I went to the art school. I'd never worked much in textiles before, so this was a totally new thing to me. I do drawing is basis of my art practice, really, but transforming a drawing into a textiles was something new to me, but it was a great process. And Maggie and Jim, in the print room was really supportive of everything. So my drawings were transformed into silk, which was the common material of a sari, and I made 3 altogether. So this one here, that was somebody who's very deep in a flare, who has, who's quite seriously ill. This one is somebody who's nearly in remission. And then there was a third, and I don't know whether I've got a picture of that. No, I haven't got a picture of the third one. But so they showed the different stages of ulcerative colitis, but they showed that women could put on these saris, the expression of their womanhood, like they usually do, but they're not diminishing their womanhood in any way. But they're showing their disease. They're showing something that they're proud of their disease, but it also created a talking point for them. That was kind of the whole idea. So they could put these on, and if they felt self-conscious about their illness, it wasn't hidden anymore. They could talk about what was going on inside them, and perhaps people would start to understand a little bit more. So yeah, it was a great project to be involved in, especially as a sufferer of ulcerative colitis myself. I take some of those drugs that Helen showed, and I've been given a lot of those pieces of paper when I've been to the doctors. And although they are very understandable, you kind of, especially as a visual person like myself, you just want a picture, and you think, can I just have a picture of what I look like inside? Because it might be nice to show people what's happening. So I thought, these girls face more of a stigma than I have. So even more, if they were wearing it and they could wear it with pride, it would try and make them feel a bit better about this stigma, and give them a talking point and make people truly understand about what they're going through. So yeah, there we go.
Thanks, Charlotte. No, that was really, really good.
How can I stop sharing? It's not letting me stop sharing. Is it going?
Oh, yeah, we've just got you now, so that's really good. In retrospect, have you got any thoughts about, how successful you felt the work was when it did hit the kind of public venues? I know we didn't get it round to all the exhibitions that we'd hoped to do, but
yeah, I loved being a part of it, and I've had a lot of, and they did the exhibition in the hospital, I had a lot of girls commenting that, you never really think about this thing of visualizing an invisible illness, and you never really think about if I had a picture of it, it could make me easily talk about it, and putting it on an item of clothing that's beautiful, and that juxtaposition against that was really interesting. And it's actually gone on a lot to inform my practice from now on. I do a lot of work on brain scans and the visualization of the brain and epilepsy, and how the brain changes patterns, and how these patterns in our body that we don't see can be used to express invisible illnesses. So it's been, in terms of my practice as well, it's informed everything I'm sort of doing now, which is really interesting. So yeah, it's been I think it was a really successful project. I think it was great to be involved, and for me personally to see the differences in my culture and South Asian culture was just astounding, really. But yeah, so it was a great project to be involved in.
Yeah, no, I think, and it was really interesting how this notion of making it beautiful became very strong for you. So actually something that you want to look at and examine more closely and in detail, and the sort of drawings that you made, again, were before they even became the saris, but were very sensitive, very beautiful, very detailed imagery. There's a kind of sense of time and care put to it that I think really came across in the work.
Yeah, it was just the process of making the drawings as well. I do a lot of drawing of animals and things like that in my practice before, but drawing something that you don't commonly associate as a beautiful thing, and taking that care over it. So I suppose the process became, really interesting as well. The fact that I sat there and was drawing ulcers, but it didn't look like it, and people didn't really make that connection sometimes, which was, in itself, that you think, well, people on the outside, you don't make that connection. If someone's looking amazing one day and trotting around, but inside they're feeling absolutely hideous and they're aching all over, and you know, I've had that experience myself quite a few times, and that sums up an invisible illness really. You can be walking around smiling and feeling great, but inside you just want to curl up in a ball. And you know, that's does sum up an invisible illness. And I think this project really helped put that across in a really great way. So yeah,
no, it's it brings a new take on life drawing, really, doesn't it?
Definitely,
yeah. Lovely, thank you. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to you with some questions later, but perhaps Eve Travers was another artist involved in the project, and she's with us as well tonight. She took animation was her kind of art form for approaching the topic, and I think Eve, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
So hi Eve. Yeah, are you happy to just tell us a little bit about how you approached the project?
I would share stuff, but I've been having trouble sharing my screen, so you might have to just put up with me talking.
Do you want to try and show the film first, or
we can do that, sure.
or do you want to talk first, as you like?
I don't mind. I might just see. Oh, I can share some photos. There we go. At least that comes up. Can you see that?
Yes.
Some, stills from the film. Okay, so I'll just say a bit about like who I am. So I'm an animator, and ever since uni, I actually came across that series Animated Minds. So it's very interesting that you brought it up. And that was a huge influence on me. And it went to basically informed my entire practice as an animator. I became very interested in the intersection of biology and psychology, and how nature and nurture combine to create who we are and how we experience the world. And I've just always been very fascinated by our internal machinery, and I want to know more about people and their experiences. And I feel like the best way to do that is by engaging with them as a source of my art. My art is very focused on incorporation of metaphorical imagery, and I weave that together with like the transformative properties of animation to enhance and emphasize real people's stories. I think obviously the person speaking is the main, is the most important part of the work, but with the right visuals and motions and the right soundscape, we can layer meanings and build better context for the audience to better engage with the subject's experience. So as you can see in this picture, this is actually my interpretation of the bowel that, like the intestines that Helen showed in the briefing. I am usually inspired by nature. I think a lot of you see a lot in nature and like plants and how they bloom and they wither and they die. That informs a lot of my artwork, because I feel like it really, we're all kind of connected to that cycle of how nature births and decays and such. So I did the intestine with thorns growing out of it to like give a sense of how much discomfort and like just rawness basically. And yeah, so that was kind of a big theme, was roses and thorns, and it's something that can be very beautiful, can also be very painful. So when I first saw the brief, And it was like talking about IBD in South Asian women. I was thought, oh, well, that's really niche, because I hadn't really thought about the connection. I wasn't sure why that was the project. And I went to the briefing, and there was a lot of information that I hadn't really ever heard before, because although I know it exists, but I didn't really know what it was, like how different it was to what I experienced, which is IBS. Is it like a dragon in comparison? You know, it was really amazing to see just how inflamed and like how serious this condition was. And I hadn't really thought how that might affect people in regards to like cultures. I hadn't really thought that that a chronic disease could be in any way like wound up in like cultures. And so I wanted to learn more, and they gave us the transcripts of different people, and one of the people that I read was this girl called Alicia. And it really resonated to me because she was this young woman who developed the symptoms about 15 or 16. And that was the same time that I developed IBS. And that had a huge impact on my studies and my social life. And as soon as I read that, I knew that I really wanted to share her story. And the best way I think of doing that is through a personal face-to-face conversation. So we sat down for like an hour, me and Alicia, and we talked about everything. And there was so much that I wanted to put in, but I couldn't put in, like about how it affected her social life in school and things like that. But in the end, animation is best when it's short. I think that's what's one of its better qualities, is that it can say a lot in a short amount of time. So I had to edit all the recorded audio down into about 2-3 minutes, and use her words as like the inspiration to find the best visual imagery that I could to like convey what she had been through. So if I just show, one of the things that she said was that her stoma was like a rose. She called it Rosie, and I loved that. I thought that was so wonderful. I thought like she's really managed to find the beauty in something that some people might find really off-putting, really struggle to come to terms with. She was just so positive about her experience with the surgery of getting the stoma bag. And she talked to me about how like the South Asian community just didn't understand that, you know, there was nothing that she could do. Like she couldn't just take these herbs, she couldn't just pray it away. You know, they kept giving her these, well, I guess in a way it was a lot of ignorance basically was like being pushed onto her. And instead of letting all that negative comments wear her down, she actually managed to turn it into some sort of pride and a purpose for herself. She took up being like an activist online, and she's now like bringing awareness to people. And I think that was just amazing, her positive strength. So yeah, I wanted the animation to be bright and beautiful and eye-catching, because that's how Alicia was to me when we talked. She was just so positive and full of energy, and she never let like her dark past in moments, because I'm sure she has it all the time where she's not feeling strong, but she never let it overcome her, and she always managed to like get up and show people that this is who I am and it's okay, and I am more than my condition. So yeah, I really found her I'm so glad I met her, and she really opened my eyes to how you can take something that could be quite distressing and turn it into a source of strength. And I think the main thing I take away from like art and medicine is that like not all of us are doctors, but all of us can create art. And we can't always understand like the medical jargon that might be thrown at us when we're in the doctor's room. I know for a fact that when I'm in a doctor's room, they start talking to me, my mind goes blank. I'm just like, okay. So I think art can be a really good bridge for people to engage with these conditions and like give a face to these invisible demons, if you will, that are like hanging on to us, because we all experience our struggles and our physical pain and our emotional pain. We all struggle with it in our own personal ways, in our own unique ways. And a doctor can tell you what's happening in your body, and they can tell you the chemicals that make you tired, the sad, happy, stressed, but they can't tell you what you think, and they can't feel what you're feeling. And so I think art is just a really great outlet for those feelings, and also a great way to gather like-minded people who've gone through similar experiences and be able to create like a platform for reassurance and comfort for those who are dealing with these illnesses. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Eve. That's really, really lovely kind of account of your process of working. And I think, yeah, one of the things that really comes across is this, the femininity, I suppose, that you picked up on, that you wanted to convey, the kind of the way you wanted to give it, give the condition voice and the experience of the patient voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think particularly, although I can't engage with the fact that it's like South Asian culture, that's not my culture, but I am a woman, so I do completely get how this condition would make you feel less feminine, because it certainly, like my IBS certainly made me feel less feminine. Like I felt I was less than. I thought there was something undesirable about me because I had this. So yeah, I really resonated with everything that Alicia went through.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So yeah, it's a taboo subject, but a real taboo subject for women, perhaps, to deal with those kind of aspects of health in a public forum. Yeah. I think we were going to try and show the video, the animation. Sati, you're going to have a go at sharing it on YouTube? See if we can pull it up. There we go.
Can you see it?
You can see it, yeah. So if you want to pop on full screen, and lovely. Here we go.
I don't think the audio's playing, is it?
Oh, no, we've not got any sound.
Can you hear it?
No, there's no sound at the moment.
And Sati, don't forget to share your screen with audio as well when you click share screen.
Yeah, I think I didn't do that. Okay, here we go.
Try again. Yeah, that's good.
The lowest point of my IBD was waking up to find the ostomy bag on my stomach. I actually went for a normal gastro appointment and I was actually rushed in, being only 18 as well, and seeing your body in like about 30 stitches and like a bag. And I remember being really scared to look at it because I thought, oh my God, my mum's fainted. What's it like? I remember when the nurse took the bag off, I looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what, it actually looks like a rose. I went through a really low time coming to terms with the bag, but I don't think the South Asian community actually helped that. They suggest like, have you tried this homemade remedy, or have you been to so-and-so priest? You get questions like, how will we explain to whoever you get married to about the bag? There's no positive enforcement. I think they don't understand that there's no cure for this condition. I couldn't come to terms with what I'd gone through. It took me a long time to overcome it, and once I did, I was just like, you know what, I can't just sit here and always be feeling sorry for myself. I've been given a second chance at life, and I need to go out there and make something of it. I want to flaunt and embrace my bag. Life takes guts, because it's taken mine.
Lovely, thank you. So I hope everybody found that interesting. Certainly, I think there were two ways really in which we managed to engage with an audience differently in the first project. I mean, there was some other work. You've seen some photos that Charlotte showed at the exhibition. So there was sculpture, there was some poetry, and there was some photography. But actually, and in the actual exhibition site in the hospital was obviously, you know, it wasn't an art gallery. It was meant to kind of pick up a new audience, an audience who was just visiting the hospital for perhaps a regular checkup, that kind of thing. But actually, the animation work also developed some legs of its own, really, and there was a lot of interest. We're still trying to find outlets for it in places like doctor surgeries and their monitors, and I think that kind of inspired us a little bit when we came towards looking at the next project, which was to look at IBD and pregnancy and think about very much the questions that Sati was asking was, okay, so this work can open up conversations, it can question taboos, it can challenge things, but are we really having impact with the audience? Are we actually meeting the right people through the work that we're doing? So with the second project, we decided to focus the commissions much more on digital work, so work that could be put out through social media, through monitors in public spaces. So the call was very much aimed at animators, filmmakers, and graphic designers and information graphics, to see really if artists and designers were able to bring something to the research material, to the facts, if you like, that would create a much more emotional engagement with patients and their families and friends, and create this platform for discussing the taboos and the problems and the challenges of IBD. So we followed the same process in a way. We put out the call to artists, we did an information evening, and then an interview process, and selected 4 new artists to work on the project, who are here with us tonight. We're in the middle of this project, really, so the artists have just got going with it. And so they're going to show us some of their early working methods and discuss how they're approaching it. Please do fire in some questions if you have them for anybody on the panel, and hopefully the whole panel can also join in with looking at this work as it's emerging. I'm going to just pick on one of the artists to go first, in no particular order, but Rae, would you like to kick us off?
Hello.
Hello.
Somehow I knew it'd be me first.
I've got to pick on somebody.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I'm Rae. I'm a graphic designer / illustrator who graduated from Wolverhampton in 2019. And I attended the information evening that the university had set up with Helen. And I guess when I attended that information evening, I guess going into it with absolutely no experience of Crohn's and colitis and no understanding of the disease, I think I was quite overwhelmed initially, like everyone's saying about the rawness and kind of the reality and like how it would affect you as a woman. You know, I've had a child, and this idea of like trying to, I guess, give new life to these babies, kind of going through your own health issues, I guess really resonated with me. And I guess what it is as well is, as a graphic designer, I've always been interested in topics and subjects that are going to have a positive impact, that aren't necessarily just an advertising for a product or a corporation. I guess I've always tried to focus on subjects like racism or I guess gender violence and things like that. So when we had this information evening, I guess it really just resonated with me that I really wanted to be part of this and be part of having a positive impact for these people who do have IBD. So I'm just going to quickly share this with you, and please forgive me, they are very rough drawings, but I guess we don't want to give away too much.
No, we've got to keep some secrets.
So this was kind of when I did my research after the information evening and successfully getting the job. That was nice. Yeah, this was the kind of things that I found that I just found so beautiful, and kind of going back to what Eve said, and basically saying that how nature kind of affects, well, how nature blooms and blossoms, but also kind of decays. And I just thought that was just a really beautiful way to kind of approach the project. So some of my initial drawings kind of just looked a bit like this. I guess trying to represent the life and I guess the dedication that I guess a woman gives to this idea of giving new life. Something that really resonated with me is kind of this idea of trying to give them a platform and this kind of safe space to discuss such emotional and personal topics. And I guess the thing as well is with me having such an emotional response to it, I kind of really wanted to produce something that really was informative and useful, I think, for both the doctor and the patient. And so I guess what I'm focusing on mainly is giving real clear information that's going to calm the patients and kind of reduce the anxiety that surrounds these topics.
But do you think we should say, because we're obviously looking at four different kind of aspects with this project, which we've not mentioned?
Yeah, that's true. So the project does focus at this project, the second part of the project. Yeah, we're looking at informing patients before they conceive, during their pregnancy, post-pregnancy, and then maybe women that have decided not to have children altogether. I guess these illustrations kind of show those 4 little sections. But yeah, I guess this idea of the supporting the science, but also giving the emotional response, I think something as a woman, I think I guess it's quite natural to me to create something that's feminine. And I guess kind of the work that we've done so far does visualize that. And it's just something that a patient could look at and would feel maybe more comfortable to approach even their family, their friends, but also their doctors and the IBD nurses. So yeah, a little bit from me.
I mean, colours obviously, colour has featured strongly all the way through so far, hasn't it? And
yeah,
even in these early drawings, you can see that colour is going to be a big part of the communication, really, of the idea. Do you want to say anything about how your choice of colour and why?
Yeah, I guess you've brought me onto something there where I guess when Charlotte was talking, and she was talking maybe more about the scientific elements of the ulcers within the body, I think actually that was something that maybe I didn't want to do necessarily. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do something that was maybe a bit more I guess maybe not so raw, maybe something that just appeared a lot more calming and maybe not so obviously medical, to kind of not frighten people, but to kind of open it up for that communication. And yeah, the colours, to me, colours is everything I do. It's something I love. It's something I've always enjoyed. yeah, I think they're just really quite powerful. And obviously with Crohn's and colitis sponsoring the project, I really wanted to incorporate the Crohn's and colitis colours, but then amend the tints and shades to kind of suit the needs of the project. And so I've chosen kind of more of like a pastel, a pastel palette to kind of introduce that calming note.
And I think because it takes it away, doesn't it, from the sort of information booklet in a way, and that kind of graphics. You can see that a bit of a shift there in really the whole kind of semiotics of the piece, I suppose.
Yeah,
it's going to look more like something you kind of want to pick up.
Yes, yeah. So exactly. So going back to what Helen showed earlier about the information booklets that Crohn's and colitis do produce, they were very text heavy, and exactly not necessarily something that someone would want to pick up, especially if they're in a lot of pain and, you know, maybe upset. You know, they don't want to sit down and read this text heavy information. So I've gone the other route and started with an image, you know, a large image that depicts these women in different surroundings and different settings, and surrounded by their friends, their family, and kind of trying to step back from, you know, the obvious medical way of informing people, but kind of, like Maggie says, obviously something that someone would look at and maybe think, oh, well, I want to read that, even if you don't have IBD. And hopefully something that can be put into doctor's surgeries, and something that the doctors can use. So yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we'll move on, but it's like a graphic designer would have been employed to make the other kind of booklet as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I have worked on projects that look like that.
Yeah.
No, and that's something.
So it's in the brief, isn't it? That actually it's like, okay, this is not just facts. Get into the kind of emotional space of a patient as well, and respond to that. Actually shifts the outcome quite dramatically, doesn't it? Which I think
it does.
It's really interesting. No, thank
you. Yeah, it's definitely a tricky task. I think what Denise said in the very beginning, you know, this kind of, it's so open that it is almost daunting as to kind of how we're gonna I guess communicate all of this quite very heavy information, and I guess very important information at the same time.
And I think with the kind of brevity as well, you know, it's not you know, actually one of the lovely things about what Eve has done and what you've done, it's about condensing complexity into something that's very accessible and easy to read. So really looking forward to seeing what you finally come up with in this project.
Yeah, I'm very much enjoying it, very much.
Shall we go to Sorrel now then, whilst we talk about this kind of ability to kind of pull together complex information and develop a project out of it. Sorrel, are you?
Yeah, hey, yeah.
Hello.
I was just raising my hand there to add to Rae's point about.
I can't see anybody's hand raising, so if you've got something to add, just butt in, because I can't see them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Rae said about how when Denise was talking earlier, how actually sometimes these projects, because we're kind of diving into the research, you actually end up creating something that surprises you as well as everyone else, which I think you know, is such a massive part of why we all love doing it. So yeah, with that, I'm going to show you guys a little presentation. Okay, is she working?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm Sorrel, I'm the animator on the project. So what I'm creating is it's about 1 minute 15 animation that is aiming to support the audience. It's like showing a truthful narrative, and also trying to give a little bit of information about IBD and pregnancy, as much as I can fit in that quite short time frame. So I started off with Becky sent us over all the transcripts from the interviews. So I started off by by basically going through those and starting to create like visuals, and really diving into that research and starting to pick out elements. So looking at like the concerns they have, for example, in this, like this woman was concerned about the high rate of like passing on Crohn's to her kid, how Crohn's like affects your sex life and your relationship with your partner. And a lot of people said that actually their relationship with their partner was really good, and they were closer because of Crohn's. Also looking at picking out information, like how people got their information. So one woman said that she liked looking like just online, but one of the things she wanted was medical journals. So she was reading through medical journals to get her information, which made me think that in this animation, I want to put a kind of info slide at the beginning to describe what we've done. So the fact that we've, there's been a study, there's doctors involved in this, and this whole animation is from transcripts so that people can really trust what we're telling them. So I was also looking at medications, enemas, things like that from this, and picking out those kind of elements. So I picked out the key areas. So the ones I identified were kind of two brackets: people who wanted children and people who didn't want children. And I felt that the people who wanted children were mostly like worried about their medication and how the medication would affect their baby, and what to do if you had a flare-up during or just after pregnancy. And also they talked a lot about their support networks, like ringing up their IBD nurses or emailing them, some of them, and also their partners and their relationships with their family. And then there was another side of women who didn't want children. And we definitely wanted, like me and Sati spoke early on about how we didn't want this animation to be like kind of saying that you had to have kids because you're a woman. So we definitely want to touch on the people who don't want kids. The fact they just want to focus on other parts of life was something one of the women said in the transcripts. And also their support networks and the fact that CCUK is there to support them, not just women who want babies as well. So then I started looking into like the storyboard and the style frame. So trying to kind of start playing with textures. On the top right, I kind of started looking at chronic fatigue, which is a symptom I suffer with as well. So I felt like that I could kind of really kind of get a bit personal with it. So some of these have been brought through to the final animation, and some of them I sacked off. This is the script. Do you think, Maggie, I should read it, or is that giving away too much?
It's up to you. I think what's this is the whole script then on one page, which is what's really interesting, isn't it? You can read it if you want to, because I think that ability to kind of reduce all this information to that has been quite a big task, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'll give it a read. That's my favorite part, when after everything, the mum and baby come and visit. Mum and baby visit the clinic. People have a lot of concerns, yeah. Pregnancy is hard enough without also having Crohn's and colitis. I'd say the biggest concern for people is having a flare-up during pregnancy, but if couples can contact us before they conceive, it's ideal, as we can support them from the very beginning. A common worry is how mother's medication will affect their baby, so it's really important for women to not stop taking their medication before they consult their doctor. At the end of the day, a healthy mum gives the best chance for a healthy baby. Breastfeeding often causes concerns, but it's actually really safe. Most medications will simply be digested in the baby's stomach and be of no harm to them. I've seen a lot of couples brought closer together by IBD, especially during a flare-up. Although it may not do much for your sex life, knowing that your partner is there for you when you're at your lowest means a lot. But children aren't for everyone. Some couples want to focus on other parts of life, and women can find social pressures to have children difficult. So whatever your choice, come and talk to us. We're here to support you. So the aim of this script, I kind of was inspired by interviews that I'd seen where the interviewer asking the questions is cut out. So it's just the replies and kind of pieced together. So that was like the style of how I wrote this, and I also wanted it to sound like it was coming from basically Helen, but a very calm, lovely IBD doctor who possibly also had Crohn's, like, so they felt like, you know, they really knew what you felt. So that was the plan with it. And then this is the storyboard. So I've got represented like a woman with a stoma bag. There's the chronic fatigue, and we're looking at the medicines here. At one point we go inside the breast and then it turns into clouds, and that's me trying to represent how the medicine actually often isn't of any harm to the baby. And I wanted to show like a really supportive couple, and then looking at other things that you can do in life, and at the end showing like as many people with IBD and pregnant or not pregnant as possible, which brings me into the style frames. So these are some of the styles frames from the animation. I'm just going to flick through them. So these are the character designs, and when designing all the characters, I just wanted it to show like as many different ethnicities and relationships as possible. So we've got like a polyamorous relationship, a queer relationship, and everything. So yeah, that's all in the film, which I'm really excited for. And I'm going to just end on a little tease, a bit of animation, which I've already done, but I won't show you anymore.
Oh, that's great, thank you. And I think it's just really nice to actually see into the process a little bit. Don't know if anybody else has got any questions or thoughts, just shout out. You have? Everyone's going quiet. I was right. Our next artist is Jess Butcher, who's not feeling great today and has lost most of her voice. Jess, are you there in some form? Don't know.
Yes, I am, but I can't talk.
Yeah.
I can't talk.
So Jess was a really interesting choice, one we were very excited about. I'm going to talk a little bit for you, Jess, and then you'll just have to tell me when I've got it wrong. Because you work with comics, and I think we had quite a big discussion, you know, about really was a comic the right media for this project, and you've got friends too. And actually, would it hit the target audience? You know, would it be appropriate for young women? But also we thought it was really cool, and maybe it would be a really different kind of approach to ones we've looked at before. So have you got something to show us, just to give us a little insight into how you work? Yeah, thanks.
So I'll talk a bit, but not much.
Yeah.
So what I was going for specifically with a comic-based project was you not only get to have all the verbal written facts that, you know, most people already know, but it also gives you a really great way of expressing emotionally how the condition may affect you. And that doesn't just mean feeling bad because you're ill. It could also be like guilt related around it, expectations put on you and by other people. And you can do all that with expressions, which is a universal language, expressions. And I'm speaking as someone on the autism spectrum who struggles with expressions. Having colorful expressional things like this give me an idea of how other people feel, and then having a nice sort of arc and ending to it that's a bit more positive, it then makes me feel hopeful. So I was hoping that I could then express that way I view the world with other people. And so I'm just going to quickly share screen. I'm going to stop talking now, by the way. If you have a question, make it a yes or no, and I'll do one of these.
Okay, so shout out your questions to Jess as she goes.
As soon as I'm able to get this to work.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the right one.
No. Oh,
Is that right? Can you see the sketch?
Yeah, we can see the sketch. We can also see your whole desktop. So
wrong one.
Sure, there's nothing on there you wouldn't want us to see, but
just a Nando's order. Okay, I got it.
There we go. Yeah.
So I'm afraid I won't explain much. I'll just flick through slowly for people. And then another example of this.
I mean, I think. Go on.
Go on.
No, go on. You go on.
I'd say this one I find to be, it's had the most positive response because it gets to be very symbolic without it being too out there. It's symbolic in a relatable way.
I mean, I don't know, maybe Helen or Sati, do you want to come in and say a little bit about why you thought Jess's approach in the comic book might work?
I think because what we were trying to do was not just give facts, we wanted to talk about women's experiences. And with comic books, what Jess does and what she's going to be doing is talking, it's a storied form, isn't it? It tells a short story. And that's exactly what I think initially we weren't even looking for that until Jess came up with this idea of using comic books, and we felt like actually that would work really well because we as humans, we do read a lot, we do read stuff that story form. And for example, the way we teach kids, we often use a very storied form of telling, or when we tell each other stories or jokes, they tend to be very story based. So it's a way of getting a message across. That's just not about information, but it's also about how to negotiate experiences having IBD and being pregnant or not being pregnant and the challenges of that. So we were very excited about what Jess is doing here. Helen, did you want to say anything?
No, I completely agree with that. We were not expecting the proposal that Jess came up with, and it really threw us because when we were thinking of a graphic design, we were thinking of a much more kind of informatic thing, and I guess biased by what we'd seen previously. So it was really interesting, and we weren't sure how it would work and how it would work for that patient group and how it would be received. But we've obviously found working with Jess fantastic, and despite being on the spectrum, Jess, you've got a real fantastic grasp, I think, of emotions and the impact they can have on people, and you display it artistically in a really beautiful way. And I know you weren't able to talk through some of those designs, but sort of the hair kind of representing all the other things that she's carrying with her that she's hiding from initially, and then goes on to share with the doctor so that she can put her worries to bay, if you like, is been really amazing. And I think the trio of artists really complement each other that are taking part in this project in really different ways, and they are covering very different aspects. And I think it's very interesting that the way they've taken very different approaches to it as well and been inspired by different things. So I've found watching it evolve fascinating, and I'm looking forward to Becky writing up her thesis on all of this. You're welcome.
As a sufferer as well, totally throwing out the artist bit here, as someone who's got ulcerative colitis, are constantly looking on Facebook forums and looking on, asking people questions on Crohn's and colitis, Facebook things, and people are always asking each other questions like, I'm on a drug called Adalimumab, which is injection, which has a lot of side effects, and people are constantly asking, how does that affect pregnancy? How does that affect? But to have a story put in front of you of how that can actually go without having to ask all these questions to everybody, and see that full story would as a patient, I think for loads of people I can speak for, would be, and have it in a visual form would be really amazing. You wouldn't have to feel like you have to, because the people obviously you always go to a doctor to ask big questions, but sometimes you just want to know a little bit of something, and you just want to ask other people's opinions who have suffered something, and that's why I go to sometimes to these Facebook groups and stuff, just to ask, like, I took my injection today, it's made me feel a bit dizzy, and if someone was pregnant like that, or they had a visual form, I think something light-hearted like a comic, it would perhaps be a bit, it's less intrusive, it's less like, oh god, I've got to ask this big question now, but having a story in something like a comic, it makes it more light-hearted, so I think that's really nice. Just thought to say.
So it does look like we've lost Maggie just for a second. So I'm not sure who wants to go next or what order you were doing it in. But Paul, maybe do you want to go ahead with your presentation?
Yeah, sure. So hello everybody. It's been super interesting just like being quiet and listening to everyone's presentations. Yeah, mega interesting stuff. And I guess, yeah, for me, sort of my role. So my role is as a documentary filmmaker. So my role is interesting because it's a capturing of the process of producing the artwork. So let me give you a little bit about me. So my name's Paul, obviously I've said that 3 times now, and I'm a filmmaker and photographer based in Smethwick. I'm really passionate in particular about the arts, so like how people respond to them and engage with them. That's from like the artist side, but also from like a public side. And that interest has sort of like sparked a project that I'm doing at the moment, which is around Birmingham's poetry scene, and what is it about poetry that brings people together. And a lot of this is about like telling the story of how art can be used as a vehicle, for sometimes for ideas, a lot of times for sort of sensitive topics and complex ideas, and I find that art's a really good way of getting these things across, because it's a bit warmer. It feels like a warmer presence, which is why I love it, which is why I love like the sort of the crossover between sort of Joe Blogg's public and an artist and the work, and how they engage and how they relate to each other. So interestingly, being a filmmaker, I've not actually got anything to show you from this project, because our interviews are due to happen in the next week or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my show reel of work. I'm going to pop it in the chat, because it'll be easier if you all click on the link, because it might lag and stuff. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to watch it, but it just gives you a little bit of an overview of the sort of style of work that I do, and then I'll talk a little bit about my approach to producing this documentary in particular afterwards. So yeah, I think it's about 2 minutes long, if I remember rightly. So I'll just catch you back here in sort of 2 minutes. That's me in a nutshell. And every time I click on that link, Vimeo reminds me that it was 2 years ago and that I need to update it. But that's a future Paul problem. Cool. So approaching this piece in particular. So yeah, it's a really interesting time for filmmaking at the moment, because there's been this little thing going on over the last sort of 18 months, which has meant that we've not really been able to get out onto film sets before. So over the last sort of year and a half or so during the pandemic, we can't really go onto film sets, and there's a lot of regulation in place around distancing and things like that. So obviously, as a responsible practitioner, we're like aiming to produce films in a way that's compliant with rules and regulations, but also safe for participants. So that kind of like throws up a few sort of obstacles, which actually are really I think obstacles actually are really beneficial sometimes for creativity. So it's give us an opportunity to sort of like think about how I'd film a process of what will take, or has been taking, you know, months and months of process, how to film that all in and present that with very, very limited film days, in the sense that I can't go to people's studios necessarily and travel all over the country and go, you know, close in people's homes and small rooms and things like that to film, which I might have done, you know, previously. There's not meetings, there's not gatherings that we can, you know, go and film. So the plan is to shoot it as an interview led documentary, turning in one of the art rooms and another space in the university and just off the university campus into studios. So the artists would be in that in the art space, and the more academic side of things would be in another space. And then let the people, the subjects, the people that are working on the project to sort of explain their perspective of it and their role within it, and let that do the talking essentially, and let that tell the story. And then to complement that, lots of B-roll, but again, your B-roll usually would be of people working, or people in their homes, or in their you know, offices, maybe in practices, places like that. That's not necessarily possible, keeping it safe as well. So instead of that, we're going to bring in some of the sketches and the drawings and the storyboards in printed form, and then have the artists talk through their approach with these sort of like maps, essentially, of what the project is going to look like. And my hope really is that it's sort of you know, obviously for the purpose of the project, you know, describes and sort of documents how artists responded to you know, to the brief, and produced some amazing work. And like, having seen, you know, the presentations and some of the other sketches, it is amazing work. It's like super interesting, and it just makes it even more fun to work with, you know, talented artists and stuff as well. But yeah, the hope that we can look at documentary and storytelling, moving image storytelling, as a way of you know, sharing ideas, and obviously art and science have collaborated for a long time, but you know, just reiterating that and shouting about that, and especially like the way that art can be used to sort of break down any sort of barriers, and obviously as a filmmaker, I'm a huge fan of film doing that. And I imagine we've all watched things on Netflix or wherever that have sort of, you know, changed our mind or sort of turned us on to something. And in its small way, I hope that films like the one we're producing here will do a similar thing for the public in turning people onto art as a way of describing you know, scientific and medical process and information.
Thank you.
That's it.
Apologies, I got chucked off the call there, so I'm glad you stepped into the breach and just carried on regardless. That was excellent. We have filled our 2 hours, unbelievably. It was quite an ambitious program, I think you'd probably agree, Paul, to get all these kind of people in talking about what they're doing in one session, but it's been really exciting to pull it all together. Does anybody have any kind of final thoughts or things they'd like to share from the panel?
I'll just say, like I said just earlier, like, as a sufferer, it's really nice to people putting things that are so hard to understand when you've been diagnosed with these diseases, putting things into a context that many people are going to understand and are going to feel they're more approachable to other people. I know when I was first diagnosed, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, it's a bad stomach, I'll be fine. And then it wasn't fine. And then you don't know what to do. And then you go through so much medication, and it's so daunting. Having any invisible illness is daunting. But the IBD is quite hidden. The symptoms of what comes about are quite hidden, and they're not very well known. I've got epilepsy, as I said before, and that's very well known. Everyone knows what happens with that, but not many people know about IBD. So it's really great to put it into these visual forms that are understandable by, makes it a lot more understandable to people. So it's really great.
Thanks, Charlotte. No, that's really good. Helen, did you want to finish up? Is it's you who kind of started this ball rolling, or Sati?
No, I just wanted to say that it's been wonderful to work with you all, and you've brightened up medicine for me. It's sort of turned something that sometimes is a bit depressing and dreary, and given it a really positive light and kind of renewed my enthusiasm. And I've been so impressed with all your work and the professionalism with which you've approached the projects. So I'm really grateful for all your efforts, and I can't wait to see the finished product from this project. I know it's going to be fantastic. So thank you, and thank you to you, Maggie, and the art school for kind of working with us and putting the teams together, and for putting today together, because I think it's been a really great celebration of something positive for World IBD Day. And we certainly need some bright lights at the moment after a pretty grim 12 months. So thank you.
Yeah, no, so true. And this is when the art school really comes to life, when it gets given these kind of challenges to respond to agendas that perhaps we hadn't even thought about ourselves before. So it's been really fascinating experience for everybody involved, I think, and hopefully the start of much more. So I guess there are no questions from the audience. Obviously what we've done today is recorded, so we will put it onto the ArtsFest website at some point, the ArtsFest online website, so you can direct other people to it who are interested in the project. And I'd just like to say, a big thank you to everybody who's taken part tonight. It's always interesting. You always bring something new to the table whenever you talk about the work that you're doing. So thank you, and I'll say good night and have a lovely evening.